Hello and welcome to Endnotes. It is my distinct and wonderful pleasure to welcome one of my good friends, Mr. Derek Ski of the band Represent. Thank you. Yeah. Whoa.
Thank you. Hey, Nick. Great
How
to
you
see you.
doing? Great to have you, sir.
Thank you.
So it is our pleasure to have you on today. As your band Represent is celebrating their 15th anniversary. What do you think helped Represent kind of stay around for that long?
I actually think about this quite commonly because there's a lot of bands, whether I like them or not, a lot of hyped bands that all of a sudden they just stop playing. They're like, hey, we're gonna have our final show or final tour. Have Heart is a perfect example where they were at the height of their game and all of a sudden they said, all right, we're done. I always thought that was kind of weird because Represent is still fun for me. We used to tour a lot. We used to, we did Europe. We did a couple full US's. We went down to Puerto Rico. We still will relatively commonly get hit up for even like South America. I'd love to make that happen, but whether it's going to, who knows.
Right.
But
your schedule's a little bit different than it was
exactly
like 10 or 15 years ago.
Exactly, but it's still fun to get together with my friends and play a show. And so. This weekend we're playing in Erie. In March we have a show that we're playing on a fest in Chicago.
Oh, nice.
And it's like that doesn't take that much time out of your life to just get in a van and go play a show, especially when, for like Have Heart or bands like that. I mean, you guys are going to be the headliners. You guys are going to be...
it's definitely worth it.
Right.
And there's songs it's not like, and people you've been playing with. And I mean, like the lineup has kind of changed a little bit.
Oh, definitely.
Here and there.
Yeah, definitely.
For Represent, but what was it like in like the early days of doing that, like versus like, currently?
I think the hardcore scene definitely has a lot of cycles that we'll go through. I mean, before we started, we were just talking about, your old bands and stuff, and when we'd come out to Edinburgh and play, and I mean, that show that you were talking about had 180 kids.
Yeah.
Whereas,
and this is for a joke band that I was in,
right?
Not a hardcore punk band, anything like that. Just a random joke band with my friends,
and probably hadn't been around for that long either.
No, not at all.
So you figure you were able to pull out 180 kids there. Mm-hmm. We've had a bunch of shows where we've had really good crowds, but then directly after that, in 2002, into 2003, it was common to have 20 kids at a show, and we were amped on it because those are our friends, and we wanted to build, and inevitably it shot up to where you'd have another 200, and then it would sink down low, and in 2007, 6-7, you had another high point, and then it's just this weird wave. We got in 2003 at a point where it was kind of getting a little bit bigger again. We had Ford Hall, we had the Hangout, and so there was multiple places. There were a lot of people that were making bands, which is another part of a scene. Having kids come to the shows is great, but also having bands to put on the shows.
Right. Filling that bill out with locals, even if they're bands that aren't around in the next year, they're still making good stuff.
Exactly. Right now, I would say we're sort of on a downswing as far as show population, but Based on Transmissions is a really good spot. They're doing a lot of really good concerts, a lot of varied concerts too.
Right. Certainly, yeah.
And so I think that we're at least blessed here having a place like that to give the kids shows.
Based on Transmissions, obviously it's an all-ages venue. There's no alcohol, no drug use, which is obviously something that Represent stands for. It Represent is a straight edge band. And for those that don't know as well, can you explain what straight edge is?
Sure. So straight edge was a lifestyle that was coined by the band Minor Threat in 1981. They're a Washington D.C. punk band. I'm not really all that much of a fan, but I like the movement that they made.
Kind of unintentionally for me and Mackay. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, he had no idea that this was going to be anything. And so the principles is that it's a totally drug-free lifestyle. So there's no drinking, no drugs, no alcohol, and so that I think really works well in a city like Erie because they said that basically Erie has the most churches and bars per capita.
Right.
Right now we have a huge opioid epidemic, which is all over, but especially here. I don't know what the statistics are this year, but I think last year we topped 100 people in overdoses, and not just in opioids, but that means 100 people in our city are no longer here because of drug use, and so
a lot of young, brilliant wonderful kids. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So I think that's why straight edge had a large following throughout the years in Erie because of the bar scene and the drug scenes that that would kind of try to influence kids, and so that was a way to push back against
especially how utterly ingrained, no pun intended, alcohol is within the music scene. Most shows you go to are at a bar, especially in Erie. Like besides like places like Basement Transmissions,
which is about it.
Yeah,
right now.
Right now, I think it breeds a dialogue essentially.
For sure.
Can I? Where are all these X's about?
There was a band called the Teen Idols. They were over in California playing, and they were all underage, but they were playing a bar. And because they weren't theoretically allowed in, but they were the act, the bar had to kind of get some way that they weren't going to be served. And so they drew big black X's on the back of their hands, so that way the bartenders would know if they were to go up, which they wouldn't go up anyways, but this is how they would be sure.
Which is like still come and practice at shows.
Exactly. And so that big black X meant don't serve these kids alcohol, and so they brought it back to the East Coast, and that became the symbol.
Like, what is it about hardcore that you love? Like, I'm assuming you love hardcore. You've been doing it before.
Yeah. I mean,
but what is it about it that makes it different from punk or from metal or from country or whatever,
Yeah, well, I think what originally did it for me was the intensity of it. Now, there's very intense musics. There's a lot of metal band. Like Slayer's a really intense band.
Right.
But it didn't seem that there was many other scenes that had this cohesive community that hardcore have.
Yeah, there's really a feeling of family, especially when I was familiar with the scene and whatnot. It was like, oh yeah, you can go to like Columbus and like be like, oh yeah, talk to this guy, he'll put you up for the night, and you'll hang out and be friends and then you'll go and post on the chat board.
Or like you'll add them on Friendster.
Yeah,
of
course.
For the most part, hardcore bands wrote about something that was worth listening. So you have great bands like Earth Crisis who not only sang about straight edge, but veganism and Earth.
It does attract like someone that is
an open mind.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have been different in other cities, but because Erie had such a cohesive scene with bands that were worth listening to.
Yeah, and from like the mid '90s like into the 2000s, it was it was like our main like musical export was like really good hardcore. Well, Derek, thank you so much for coming on, telling us a little bit about that. The show we're talking about is
February 10th.
This Saturday, and more to come for sure. Thank you so much, man. Tune in for the next Endnotes. Stay tuned, and I will see you later.